Hello and welcome to Fintech Search Podcast, the first podcast from the Middle East for the Middle East. I'm excited to be joined today by the one and only Peter Neubauer. Thanks for joining us, Peter.
Hi, and good morning to you.
Thanks. So Peter Neubauer is the CEO of VIPASO, which is a Viennese startup dedicated to globally scaling Horizon, which is an end-to-end complete mobile payment solution. And Peter, as we always like to start this show with one important question is, what does fintech mean to you?
Actually, that's a particular question to me. Why is that? Because I spent all my career, I have to say, in incumbent financial institution and in the incumbent payments industry. And now I'm raising and nurturing, so to say, a startup company in the fintech sector. So to me, this is really something special. But the point is, I've seen, and I'm really, I can say I'm a time witness because I've been in the payments industry for about 30 years in various positions in Europe, in Austria, internationally. But what I've seen in the past 10 or 15 years is that the development is, and the speed of the development is even getting higher and higher, and things are developing so fast that I think really the interesting side of development in the payment industry is happening on the fintech side. So outside the incumbent banking system, and that's the reason why I'm here.
Okay, great. I mean, it just seems like you really know your stuff when it comes to fintech, based on your experience and how long you've spent in the space, right?
Yes, and if you look back for some 5 or 10 years when the whole thing of fintech started, it was a merge of different developments like new technologies, also new regulations, which play a very, very important point and very important part of the whole game, and also new people entering the industry. And this is always good if you have some fresh blood in an old industry.
Yeah, and you make a great point. I mean, as regulations change, as new technology comes to light, I mean, fintech companies really need to be very agile in order to stay up to date on all the latest trends, all the latest technology, and all the latest regulations.
Yes, they have to, but also the incumbent banks and the incumbent industry has to adapt and
Hmm.
adopt, for sure. And when I remember maybe 15 years back when all this liberalization in terms of access to the payments industry and the financial industry happened all over the place, starting in Europe, but also being adopted in many regions like the Middle East and Africa, in Southeast Asia, and in the Americas, you could see really a flourishing set of new companies and new minds and new aspects coming into the industry. And this was really a great development.
Great, great. And so, a little bit off script, but what sort of advice would you give to startups, fintech startups specifically, that maybe their ideas are a little bit ahead of the game? Maybe they're a little bit moving a little bit too fast for the banks. Maybe the financial institutions are being a little bit sluggish, a little bit stuck in their old ways, and not quite up to pace that some of these new innovative, really forward thinkers, how their products might be in the market.
Let me put it very, very simple, and that is a good idea is not yet a business proposition.
Mm.
So what you really have to look for and look after is, can you make money with what you are inventing? I remember having seen a number of startup companies in Europe with a great idea, but when I was speaking with the inventors, if I may say so, I was asking them, so what if the decisive point that decide will happen, and that is, what if you have customers, real customers? Are you able to manage customer relationship, and also have you established the back office processes that you need to have to run a smooth business? And this is really where the decisive development takes place. Are you capable of implementing an operative business and making money out of it or not?
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's one of those, ideas are cheap, but execution is everything, right? So anybody can have an idea, but are you actually able to run a business? And that's actually kind of the biggest thing that I think that a lot of, especially young entrepreneurs, they don't think about the business side of the business. They think the idea is going to pretty much sail it away. And you're saying, will you be able to make money? Would it make sense in the market? What do you do when you have a customer?
What do you do when you have a customer? What do you do when problems start?
Hmm.
When you have to fix things, so to say, live with open heart, if we, as we say in Austria. So this is really something that needs to be achieved. But on the other side, if you look at some of the new technology that comes into play, some of it is really exciting. But sometimes, and this is also something which is to some part true for VIPASO and Horizon, it also needs to have the right timing to distribute it and to offer it into the market. Because if you have a great technology and a great idea, but the market is not yet prepared for it, then it sometimes fails.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I think we've seen that in a lot of products over the years that just, it was cool technology, it was really interesting, but the market just wasn't ready to accept it yet. And, eventually it failed. And then a few years later, a similar product comes to market and is wildly successful just because they waited for the right time and, kind of primed the market to be ready for their product.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, as we mentioned, kind of in the intro, that Vapasto is the home company for this new product that you guys are launching called Horizon. Can you tell us let us bit excuse me, can you tell us a little bit about Horizon? When did it get started, and what does it do?
Sure. Thanks for that question. VIPASO stands for Vienna Payment Solution, and that just goes hand in hand where we are located. We are an Austrian startup company, but right from the beginning, really, they had an international orientation and an international reach, as we have developed this mobile payment solution, which we call Horizon, to give it a name. But let me point out one thing here at the beginning. We are considering ourselves as a technology and infrastructure company. So we are not aiming at distributing or positioning Horizon as a new payment brand. No, we are using that name for marketing it, but we have a very clear and strict white label philosophy that I may explain a little later in more detail to you. But this is important to understand, that we are not a payments company or a payment scheme. Rather, we are an infrastructure provider that has developed a very flexible solution that we believe could be rolled out and implemented all over the place, especially in emerging countries, which are one of the core pillars of our sales and distribution strategy.
Yeah, sure. I mean that it's very interesting that the way that you mentioned that you're not the payment provider, you're the infrastructure for payment providers. Did I get that right?
Exactly. So we should distinguish between two different layers, if I may say so. One layer is the payment method, which is the core of all the payment processes. It can be a bank card, it can be a transfer payment, it can be a direct debit, it can be a mobile money transaction. But we are, so to say, in front of that because we aim to providing a completely digital infrastructure for the point of sale, for the uh, proximity area, which means that would normally cover a typical shopping situation where two people meet, a delivery service situation, an event, a closed loop situation. So in the future, I really believe that payments will be completely digitalized and will be largely mobile. Even if you
Absolutely.
consider, even if you consider that more and more transaction will happen in the what we now call the e-commerce space, but we are today already using the e-commerce logic and infrastructure for doing transactions on the point of sale.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like that everything is really becoming mobile first, whether it's payments, whether it's social media, whether it's any sort of communication, any sort of internet. There's an app for everything these days, and yeah, I mean, we're definitely moving further and further away from needing to physically be there with cash or with a check or with a bank transfer or with even a credit card. It's just not quite as
Yes,
necessary anymore. So I guess
yes.
one of the quickest ways for me to understand, how does a company work is to really understand, who would your customers be? So whenever you say we're Horizon, we're going to target these customers, and this is the solution that we're going to offer to them. Who would be that customer, and what are the solutions that you would pitch for them to become your customers?
Great question. Thank you. The typical customer for VIPASO would be either a financial institution or a large retailer, a petrol company, an event organizer, a shopping center management, whatever. Why is that? Because, as I said before, we are providing an infrastructure and a technology that we are licensing to partners, and they may use it for their purposes. Let's take a simple and a typical example. I'm speaking with a number of banks in the Middle East, in Africa, and also in Southeast Asia. And we are offering to them that they would use our infrastructure to be implemented into their environment as just another payment function, especially for the shopping situation. So our solution Horizon consists of three components that may be the wallet for the consumer, then the solution, what we call the terminal solution for the merchant or the shop assistant who is asking for the money in a shopping situation. And then the central technology is our backend, which makes sure that the safe and secure transactions are taking place. We are delivering, and to reiterate on something I mentioned before, we are delivering this whole solution on a strict white label basis. So if you were to be a large bank, say in the Emirates or in any other country, especially in emerging countries, you may implement our solution under your own brand, and it may be called Bank XYZ Pay. And this can be rolled out to both sides of the coin, which means the merchant and the consumer. And what makes us different, among other things, is that we are using Bluetooth instead of NFC for integrating a payment transaction and making a transaction possible between the two devices. And if I say two devices, we're just talking about smart devices, being a mobile phone or a tablet computer or else. So our main proposition is to really get rid of the complete physical infrastructure in the shop that you would need today for doing a transaction. So we are not using a terminal anymore, a physical thing that you are tapping your card on or similar, but rather you would present your mobile phone as a consumer, and on the other side, the shop assistant would also use his smart device, for instance, a tablet computer, for doing a transaction, and this transaction is happening end to end and seamlessly via Bluetooth. And this is exactly the proposition that we have developed.
Oh wow. So you don't need to, let's say, have the cash register with the terminal anymore where you click to or you tap your phone to pay. Whenever you have delivery services, they don't need to present you with this device where you tap on that to pay. But if they have a mobile phone and you have a mobile phone and you both have Bluetooth, then you can go ahead and make the payment that way. Is that correct?
That's what we're doing.
Great. And this is working on a white label basis. So it's not like the consumer and the merchant need to download a Horizon app. It would actually be the merchants or the banking provider that you would download their app, and it would look like it's from them, correct?
This is absolutely correct because we're delivering our service in two different ways of deployment. The one thing is you can have a standalone app, and the standalone app, of course, will be completely branded as you like, as our licensee. But the other thing is we would also deliver an SDK, which is a small program that can be implemented into existing solutions. So all over the place, wherever I speak with banks, being in Africa or in Middle East or in Asia, most of them, I would say 95% already have their mobile banking apps or the payment apps. So we would absolutely integrate into their apps being as one more new function with the next release, so to say, that it would offer. And this is very seamless.
That's great. So it's not in addition to what they have, it's actually helping out what they have. And you mentioned a lot of emerging markets. Even just when you're describing things casually, you're mentioning the East Asia, you're mentioning Middle East, you're mentioning Africa, which I think that most of the fintech community realize that these are big, wide open markets for financial inclusion because there's just not that much infrastructure when it comes to finance over there. So how important is financial inclusion to you?
Um, Let me say that we should not underestimate the agility and the movement that is taking place in all these economies and regions. However, we know that 30 to 40% of the population in these countries is still not participating in financial transactions and financial services. That's for several reasons. The infrastructure reasons, there are just some components of economic development, and also maybe for some political or other reasons for having that. If you look at the international institutions like the United Nations, the World Bank, and what have you, all of them have financial inclusion and financial development on their agenda. And this is exactly what we would like to support. And how are we doing that? First of all, because we are seamlessly integrating into the environments that exist. We don't want to introduce a new environment or impose anything on existing infrastructures. That's the one thing. But the second thing is because we think we have an extraordinary economic proposition. So just to give you one figure, or two figures, I have to say, if you look at the incumbent infrastructure that you would need to do a payment transaction on a point of sale, and if you need a terminal, for instance, a terminal hardware costs at least $200. If you consider for a second a country like Cameroon or Togo or Chad, and even some countries in the region of the Middle East, to many of the shopkeepers, this is unbearable because they cannot finance a terminal, or even if they would need a second one with that price. And there comes Horizon into play, because our aim is that the usage of the whole system goes down to $1 or $2 per device per year. So this is a very, very low level and low cost infrastructure being run locally. And if I say locally, and that goes hand in hand with our strategy of white labeling and regional deployment, we believe that the data of transactions and of payments should stay where they belong to. So we are absolutely not a data gatherer or data hunter. We rather provide a technology and an infrastructure that shall be implemented locally under local circumstances and regulations. And this is what it's all about. And secondly, and this was the main point of your question, to have a very, very economic and low-cost infrastructure that can be run anywhere.
I mean, that's amazing. So $1 or $2 is the cost to the merchant for using Horizon, as opposed to the $200 that they typically have to pay for payment infrastructure or for the hardware.
Yes, but as a matter of fact, we would never charge a merchant or a consumer, because we are not in the end user game. We are providing an infrastructure to, say, a large bank or a retail chain, and the retail chain would like to enrich their customer engagement by providing a payment functionality. Let's take that example. And to them, our license fee is geared exactly at this level. So we would like to provide an infrastructure that for them is inducing cost of $1 or $2 per year per item. Whatever they charge to the customers, it's part of their business philosophy and strategy, and this is nothing of our business. We are an infrastructure provider.
Yeah, of course. And so we've talked a lot about the, financial inclusion and the importance of making sure that your product, that the market is actually ready for your product. We've talked about how, sometimes, banks and regulations and even governments can sometimes be a little bit sluggish when it comes to, products rolling out that might be a little bit more cutting edge, but it just might not be their time, because the market or the regulations are just not there yet. So, in your opinion, how well do you believe the Middle East, or particularly the UAE, has responded to the fintech movement?
Actually, I've been addressing these markets only recently, and also have to say, VIPASO itself, we have done our active marketing since September or August last year. So we are pretty new to the market. Nevertheless, we have already established dozens of relationships with banks all over the place, and we will be implementing soon in a number of countries. And if you look especially to the Middle East and the Emirates, I see a number of interesting developments going on. So, for instance, recently the Emirates have also established a consortium where they are pursuing a national payment strategy. And a thing like that you can see in many of these emerging economies. And I like that because this is something that sometimes is missing in the Western European or countries of the Northern Hemisphere. Why? Because there's so much incumbents and all the infrastructure in the place that nobody, if I may say so, dares to have a new and fresh approach to all of this. So these countries, especially in the Middle East, to some extent, they can work from a clean sheet, and that is much better than having all this incumbent infrastructure in place, which, in my opinion, is really hindering many of the Western European and North American banks in doing real innovation. Why? Because all of this investment done in the past that they would need to write off, and this is a big obstacle in providing fresh infrastructure. And if you look at the fintech industry and seen in the Middle East, there's really so much going on. Sometimes you can't even follow everything what is happening every day, but I think it's very exciting, and we would love to be part of it.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And so, if you could sort of, think to the future with me, really like fantasize and imagine about what the future is like. Obviously, contactless payment is not that new of a topic. It's still something that's evolving and it's becoming even more and more seamless, as as technology develops. But what do you believe is the next future of mobile payments? How do you see, payments evolving, let's say in the next 30, 40 years as opposed to the next 5 years?
Well, that's a very particular question. Let me start with a simple statement, and that is, I truly believe that payments in the future will be digital, mobile, and seamless. So that means if you look at the past and the heritage that we have, having a retail logic of the physical space and the retail logic of the digital space called e-commerce. And to some extent, both words are not yet married so far. I think this is the big next step, to marry these two worlds. And you would pay in the same way and with the same seamlessness, either via the internet or via mobile phone in an e-commerce environment or in the shop. And this is exactly, if I may reiterate and re-stress the fact, this is exactly what the idea behind VIPASO and Horizon is, that we bring the electronic and digital payment directly to the point of sale. Do we really believe that we may use terminals, the physical thing, in 15 years on a point of sale? I don't think so. It will be completely integrated with all the other payment methods of the retail space. And also, will there be, in 15 years, will there be a difference between shopping in the internet at a certain merchant or in the shop? I don't think so. It will be all merit and it will be all grown together. And this is what I would love to see, because I still do not understand. If you look for a particular shop and you would like to know if you need something very urgent because you have to repair something at home, and then you go to the internet and look what is available in the next shop around your corner, you can't find it out because it's still two divided spaces. And
Hmm.
I really believe that they will be married and grow together. And the same goes for payment. Payment will be a unique and a seamless thing. And if you ask me for the next 30 or 40 years, I mean, it is to be seen what the digital currencies and payment methods, what role they will play. Will it be crypto? Will it be central bank digital currencies? Will it be stable coins? That's the big thing. I truly believe that the CBDCs, the public electronic money, if I may say so, of course, will play a much, much bigger role than today, because it may be the natural development for cash being replaced with digital cash. So I think this will be one of the major developments. And what crypto does and Bitcoin and all of this, that kind of stuff, we'll see. That will be decided by the markets.
Great, great. Sorry to put you on the spot there a little bit to have you use your imagination on a live recording, but yeah, I always just think about these things. You know, what is next? You know, obviously we're contactless now, but will it be facial recognition where you basically walk into a store and your face, aligns with your entire identity, and nobody can steal it because this is actually they can see from the cameras that it's you, and you walk in, grab your stuff, and walk out, and there you go. They recognize that this is you buying it. I just always think about these things, and how does crypto and NFTs and the metaverse play a role in basically everything that we're going to be experiencing. How much is our lives going to change within the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? I think it's very difficult to imagine, and we always look to people like you, these the experts in the space, to kind of guide us on how can we envision a future whenever things are changing so rapidly.
Yes. If we say for a second with the physical retail space, okay? So if you look at the typical experience that you may have a customer walking into a shop, say to a grocery shop or something similar, one of the last pain points, if I may say so, is queuing at the checkout.
Hmm.
Everybody hates that. And also the merchants and the retailers, they know exactly that there is a connection between the length of the queue and the turnover they make. In other words, the longer the queue, the less turnover they make because people hate to queue. So I think one of the next big things will be self-checkout in one or the other way. The scenario that you just described, walking in the store and walking out of the store, is not so far away, I believe. The question will be what processes and what technologies may support that. Of course, we're also working here at VIPASO at self-checkout scenarios. And let's assume for a second that you walk into a shopping center or into a large store, and the retailer would provide you, which is typical today, a loyalty app, right? Because they want you to come back. They want to offer you some vouchers and discounts and perks, and also maybe some parking time in the parking garage whatsoever. So you walk in and you say, I'm here, and immediately you're having a connection to the retail, and then the retail knows that you're there. So they can offer you things and they can advise you to do things during the shopping situation. How much time would you spend in a shop? It depends on the size of the shopping, but certainly between 10 minutes and 30 minutes. So this is a great time having interaction with the customers. And also it's a matter of trust. So if you ask for permission, and the consumers are really having an advantage out of that, so they would do that. And then the checkout situation and doing the payment seamlessly is just the next step and is an integral part of such an experience. I think this we will be seeing to come in the next 5 to 10 years.
That's amazing. So yeah, if I can give you a little bit of an opportunity to do some self-promoting, based on everything that we just mentioned, the way that the banks are adjusting, the way that the Middle East is adjusting, the way that just fintech is evolving. what do you feel like are the next big steps for VIPASO? What can we see in the future from your company?
Oh yeah. So first things first, we are working now on a number of implementations and negotiations with several banks in various countries. So what I would love to see for us is to have our product and our infrastructure being implemented in different use cases. For instance, in Vienna, we have every year one of the largest open air festivals in the middle of the city, because we have a large island in the river of Danube, if you're familiar with that geography. So, and we will be implementing for the first time our solution in an event scenario. We are negotiating with a large e-commerce company in Indonesia. We are talking with a number of large banks in Africa, in the sub-Saharan region, and also with some national institutions. What I would love to see for us is some more recognition, but I have to say we are really new to the market, some more recognition by the public institutions, because we really believe we could contribute to the national agenda of financial inclusion and financial integration, because as we have discussed before, I think our solution horizon is really appropriate for lowering the barriers to entry into financial services. And this is exactly what I would like to see in the next 12 months or so.
That's great. That's great. So yeah, honestly, I think that we've really we've covered a whole lot in this podcast. I think that from how Horizon is changing the landscape of payments to just all of the intricacies that go into payment solutions. I think that a lot of times the easier payments become for everybody, the less we think about everything that goes into it. So yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Peter, for coming on to our show, and I wish the best for VIPASO, and I wish the best for Horizon, and I hope that anybody listening will think of you guys next time they pull out their phone to make a payment.
Yes, and if anybody wants to learn more about us, it's easy to find us in the internet. The domain is vipaso.io, and I look forward to having many contacts. And thank you for having me and having this great conversation.
Absolutely. And we look forward to seeing you at the Fintech Surge event at the Dubai World Trade Center from October 10th to October 13th, 2022. To our audience, thank you for tuning in to the Fintech Surge podcast. Until next time.